Long before the world knew the name Finland, the land was covered with endless forests, icy lakes, and deep snow. Giant glaciers once ruled the region during the Ice Age. When the ice slowly melted thousands of years ago, humans finally arrived in this harsh northern land. The first people of Finland were hunters and fishermen. They lived beside rivers and forests, surviving through nature. Winters were brutal, but these early tribes learned how to adapt. They made clothes from animal skins, built wooden shelters, and traveled using primitive skis across frozen lands. Among these ancient people were the ancestors of the Sami tribes, the indigenous people of northern Finland. They followed reindeer across the Arctic wilderness and developed a unique culture connected deeply with nature. For centuries, Finland remained isolated from the rest of Europe. While mighty kingdoms rose in the south, Finland stayed a mysterious wilderness filled with forests, wolves, bears, and icy lakes. But this isolation would not last forever. By the 12th century, powerful neighboring kingdoms began looking toward Finland. One kingdom in particular wanted control over the region, Sweden. Swedish kings and Christian missionaries entered Finland, bringing religion, trade, and war. At that time, many Finnish tribes still followed ancient pagan beliefs, worshipping nature spirits and gods connected to thunder, forests, and the sea. The Swedish Crusades slowly pushed Christianity into Finland. Churches were built, and Swedish rulers gained power over the Finnish tribes. Over time, Finland became part of the Swedish kingdom. For the Finnish people, life changed dramatically. Swedish became the language of government and the upper classes. Finnish peasants worked hard in forests and farms, while nobles loyal to Sweden controlled politics and trade. Yet despite foreign rule, the Finnish identity survived. The people kept their language, traditions, songs, and legends alive through generations. One famous legend spoke of heroes and magical powers in a mythical land. These stories later became part of Finland's national epic, the Kalevala, which would inspire Finnish nationalism centuries later. But life in medieval Finland was difficult. Harsh winters brought starvation. Wars between Sweden and Russia turned Finland into a battlefield again and again. Villages burned. Armies marched through forests. Thousands died from famine, disease, and conflict. Still, the Finnish people endured. They became known as strong, silent survivors of the North, people who could survive freezing winters and endless hardships. As centuries passed, Finland remained under Swedish rule. But in the east, a giant empire was rising rapidly. The Russian Empire was growing stronger, and soon, Finland would find itself trapped between two powerful worlds. For hundreds of years, Finland remained under the control of Sweden. Swedish kings ruled the land, collected taxes, and sent Finnish men to fight in endless wars. But Finland was never truly peaceful. Because of its location between Sweden and Russia, the country became a dangerous borderland. Whenever the two powers fought, Finland suffered first. In the 16th and 17th centuries, war after war devastated Finnish villages. Russian armies invaded from the east, while Swedish forces defended their territory. Farms were destroyed, forests burned, and thousands of civilians were killed. One of the darkest periods came during the Great Northern War in the early 1700s. At that time, Peter the Great was transforming Russia into a massive military empire. He wanted control over the Baltic region and challenged Sweden for dominance. The war became catastrophic for Finland. Russian forces occupied much of the country in a brutal period known as the Great Wrath. Villages were burned, people were tortured, and many Finns were taken away as prisoners or slaves into Russia. Fear spread across the frozen land. Families escaped deep into forests to survive. Starvation and disease killed thousands. Entire communities disappeared. Although Sweden eventually regained control, Finland had been shattered. Over time, many Finnish people began realizing that Sweden viewed Finland mainly as a buffer zone against Russia, a place to defend, but not truly protect. Then came the early 1800s and the rise of one of history's greatest conquerors, Napoleon Bonaparte. Europe was thrown into chaos by the Napoleonic Wars. Sweden sided against France, while Russia made temporary peace with Napoleon. As part of this political struggle, Russia attacked Finland in 1808. The Finnish War was brutal but short. Sweden could no longer defend the territory effectively. In 1809, Sweden officially lost Finland to Russia after more than 600 years of rule. For many Finns, it felt like the end of an era. But surprisingly, Russian rule began differently than many expected. Alexander I, the Russian Tsar, made Finland an autonomous Grand Duchy within the Russian Empire. Finland was allowed to keep many of its own laws, religion, and traditions. This gave Finland something it had never truly possessed before, a separate political identity. The capital was moved from Turku to Helsinki, which Russia wanted to develop into a grand city closer to St. Petersburg. New roads, schools, and government institutions appeared. Finnish culture slowly began awakening. During the 19th century, Finnish writers, artists, and thinkers started building a national identity. The Finnish language gained importance for the first time in politics and education. The publication of the Kalevala in 1835 became a turning point. The ancient epic gave Finns pride in their own history and mythology. Nationalism spread across Europe, and Finland was no exception. People began dreaming of something dangerous, independence. But the Russian Empire would not allow that dream easily. As Russia became more authoritarian in the late 1800s, Finnish freedoms slowly started disappearing. And soon, Finland would face one of the greatest struggles in its history. By the late 1800s, Finland had changed greatly under Russian rule. Cities were growing, education was improving, and Finnish nationalism was becoming stronger every year. But the rulers of Russia were becoming increasingly nervous. The Russian Empire feared losing control over its territories. As revolutionary ideas spread across Europe, the Tsars decided to tighten their grip on Finland. A harsh policy called Russification began. The Russian government tried to weaken Finnish identity by forcing Russian language and culture into Finnish society. Newspapers were censored, political freedoms were restricted, and many Finnish officials were replaced with Russians. Finnish people grew angry. Secret resistance movements appeared across the country. Students, writers, workers, and politicians united against Russian control. One of the most hated figures was the Russian Governor-General Nikolai Babrikov, who enforced harsh policies against Finland. In 1904, a Finnish nationalist named Eugen Schauman assassinated Babrikov in Helsinki before taking his own life. The assassination shocked the entire empire. To many Finns, Schauman became a symbol of resistance. At the same time, Russia itself was falling into chaos. Revolutions, strikes, and military defeats weakened the empire. Finland used this instability to demand more rights. In 1906, Finland achieved something revolutionary for its time. It became one of the first countries in Europe to give women full voting rights. This was a historic moment. Finnish women could not only vote, but also run for parliament, far ahead of many Western nations. But the struggle was far from over. Then came World War I. The massive war pushed Russia toward collapse. Millions died, economies failed, and revolutions erupted across the empire. In 1917, the Russian Tsar was overthrown. Soon after, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in Russia during the Russian Revolution. Finland saw its chance. On December 6, 1917, Finland officially declared independence. For the first time in history, Finland was now a free nation. But freedom came with terrible consequences. The country quickly split into two sides. The Reds, inspired by socialism and the Russian Revolution, wanted a workers' government. The Whites, led by conservative nationalists, wanted a democratic independent Finland free from communist influence. In 1918, the tension exploded into the Finnish Civil War. Brother fought against brother. Cities became battlefields. Executions, prison camps, and massacres spread terror across the country. The Whites, led by military commander Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim, eventually defeated the Reds with support from Germany. The war ended, but Finland was deeply wounded. More than 30,000 people died in only a few months. Hatred and division remained for years. Yet despite the tragedy, Finland survived as an independent nation. The young country now faced an uncertain future, surrounded by dangerous powers. And in the East, a new threat was rising from the ashes of Russia, the Soviet Union. After gaining independence, Finland worked hard to rebuild itself. The wounds of the Civil War slowly healed, and the country began developing democracy, education, and industry. But peace in Europe would not last long. In the 1930s, powerful dictators were rising across the continent. Adolf Hitler ruled Germany, while Joseph Stalin controlled the massive Soviet Union. Both leaders were preparing for war. Finland watched nervously as tensions grew. Then, in 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the secret Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, dividing parts of Eastern Europe between them. Finland suddenly found itself in danger. Stalin demanded Finnish territory near the city of Leningrad, claiming it was needed for Soviet security. Finland refused to surrender its land. The Soviet Union responded with force. On November 30th, 1939, Soviet forces invaded Finland, beginning the brutal Winter War. The world expected Finland to collapse quickly. The Soviet Union had millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and massive air power. Finland had only a small army, but the Finnish people refused to surrender. Using skis, camouflage, and deep knowledge of snowy forests, Finnish soldiers launched deadly surprise attacks against Soviet troops. One legendary Finnish sniper, Simo Häyhä, became famous as the White Death. Hidden in the snow, he reportedly killed hundreds of enemy soldiers. The frozen forests became nightmares for Soviet troops. Finnish fighters dressed in white moved silently through snowstorms, while Soviet tanks became trapped in icy terrain. The entire world admired Finland's courage. But despite heroic resistance, Finland could not hold forever against such a huge enemy. In 1940, Finland signed peace with the Soviet Union, losing important territory but remaining independent. For Finland, survival itself was considered a victory. Then came World War II on a larger scale. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Finland joined a fight against the Soviets in what became known as the Continuation War. Finland hoped to regain lost lands. Although Finland cooperated militarily with Germany, it tried to avoid becoming fully controlled by Nazi ideology. Still, the war was devastating. Thousands more Finnish soldiers died fighting in freezing forests and battlefields. Eventually, the Soviet Union pushed Finland back once again. In 1944, Finland made peace with the Soviets and was forced to give up more territory and pay massive war reparations. But unlike many Eastern European countries, Finland achieved something remarkable. It stayed independent. The Soviet Union did not occupy Finland completely. Instead, Finland adopted a careful policy of neutrality during the Cold War. The country maintained democracy while avoiding direct conflict with its powerful Soviet neighbor. This delicate balance became known around the world as Finlandization. Slowly, Finland transformed itself from a poor war-torn nation into a modern industrial society. Education improved dramatically. Technology industries grew. Finnish society became more equal and stable. Yet the memories of war, sacrifice, and survival remained deeply rooted in the Finnish national identity. And soon, Finland would rise as one of the world's most successful modern nations. After the destruction of World War II, Finland faced enormous challenges. Large parts of the country were damaged, the economy was weak, and thousands of families had lost loved ones. Yet Finland refused to collapse. The country focused on rebuilding through hard work, discipline, and education. Factories expanded, roads were built, and new industries emerged. Finland paid its war reparations to the Soviet Union faster than many expected, proving its determination to survive. During the Cold War, Finland walked a dangerous path between East and West. While neighboring countries fell under Soviet influence, Finland remained democratic and independent. Finnish leaders carefully avoided provoking the Soviet Union while quietly building strong relations with Western Europe. This strategy helped Finland stay peaceful during one of the most dangerous periods in modern history. Over time, the Finnish economy transformed completely. Forests and timber had once dominated the economy, but Finland soon became famous for technology, engineering, and innovation. One company became a symbol of Finnish success worldwide, Nokia. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Nokia phones were used across the globe. The company helped turn Finland into a global technology powerhouse. At the same time, Finland built one of the world's best education systems. Finnish schools focused less on pressure and more on creativity, equality, and critical thinking. Teachers became highly respected professionals, and students consistently ranked among the best in the world. Finland also became known for its healthcare, clean cities, low corruption, and high quality of life. International rankings often described Finland as one of the happiest countries on earth. But Finnish happiness was not built on luxury alone. It came from stability, trust, safety, and a strong connection to nature. The people of Finland still loved forests, lakes, saunas, and quiet life close to nature. Even in modern cities like Helsinki, nature remained an important part of daily life. Finnish culture also gained global popularity through music, sports, and entertainment. Heavy metal bands from Finland earned international fame. Finnish athletes became respected in racing, ice hockey, and winter sports. The country's design and architecture became admired worldwide, yet history continued, shaping Finland's future. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Finland gained greater freedom in international politics. The country joined the European Union in 1995 and strengthened ties with Western nations. Then, in 2022, Europe was shocked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For Finland, memories of past wars with Russia returned immediately. After decades of military neutrality, Finland made a historic decision. In 2023, Finland officially joined NATO. The move marked one of the biggest changes in Finnish foreign policy in modern history. Today, Finland stands as a symbol of resilience. From frozen wilderness and centuries of foreign rule to civil war, invasion, and survival against powerful empires, Finland's journey has been extraordinary. The Finnish people proved that even a small nation surrounded by stronger powers could survive through courage, unity, intelligence, and determination. And in the far north of Europe, beneath forests, snow, and endless winter skies, the story of Finland continues.
Enjoyed the video? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories and videos every day. Your support keeps the channel alive and motivates us to create even better content.